Hi everyone and welcome to this demo of Nuance's Gatekeeper platform. I'm very happy to be with you today. My name is Simon Marchand. I'm Nuance's Chief Fraud Prevention Officer. And today we'll be looking at some of the features and functionalities of the Gatekeeper platform. Gatekeeper is our authentication and fraud prevention tool that leverages biometrics technology as well as other detectors to be able to identify fraudsters and authenticate customers in very little time. As you can see here on screen, voice, behavioral, and conversational biometrics are at the core of the solution. So we use the unique voice print that we can create for each customers to authenticate them very securely with very little audio, as little as 2 seconds. But we also have those layers of behavioral biometrics, which is how you interact with the device, as well as conversational biometrics, which is the words you're using in a conversation, whether it's a spoken conversation or a written one in a chat session, for example. And of course, as part of all of this, we layer additional security pieces and detectors such as anti-spoofing, synthetic speech detection, playback detection, bot attack detections, so on and so forth. So today we'll be looking at 4 use cases mainly. We'll be looking at how we can use voice to authenticate someone when they're calling into a call center. We'll also be looking at how voice biometrics can be used to detect fraudsters within the first seconds of an interaction taking place. Then we'll move to behavioral biometrics and look at how we can monitor someone's behavior on a web page or as they're doing a transaction on a web portal. And I'll finish by showing you how we can pair behavioral biometrics and passive authentication with push notification leveraging voice biometrics, effectively providing you the strongest possible 2-factor authentication you can get. Now, I will start by showing you what it looks like for an agent using the Gatekeeper platform. If you look on the screen right now, what you'll see is essentially what an agent would have on their desktop. As soon as we deploy Gatekeeper, that little widget becomes available. And what you will see is as soon as I dial in, my name will appear on the screen because we're using my phone number as a unique identifier. And as soon as you see that, the conversation is being processed and matched against the voice print on file for me, the customer. And if I dial in, you will see that within a few seconds, we can give the agent that green check mark that certifies they're speaking with the right person. So dialing in right now. Hi, my name is Simon. I'm calling today because I need to change the address on my account. And there you go. Didn't have to do more than that. Didn't have to give any particular IDs, answer any particular questions. We're removing all of the KBA process, cutting maybe 40, 50, or 60 seconds from the call and going straight to why I'm calling with the certainty that I'm the right person. Now, what's interesting with voice biometrics is that it's completely language agnostic, channel agnostic, or device agnostic. It doesn't matter if I'm calling from this particular phone or if I'm calling on a Skype session, it will always be able to recognize my voice. And because we're using the unique characteristics of my voice as it sounds and not the words, the language is also irrelevant. So if I dial back in exactly the same phone number, bonjour, mon nom est Simon Marchand. J'aimerais changer l'adresse que vous avez au compte pour moi, s'il vous plaît. And there you go, just as quick and effective as in English. So I could be speaking any language, it would still work. I could also be speaking a made-up language. It would also work because the only thing that matters is the 1,000 characteristics that the system uses from my voice to create that unique voice print. Now, I want to show you what it would look like if I was trying to defraud an organization. So let me just hang up right here. And we will call back. And what I'll do is change the phone number it's trying to associate with the interaction. That way you will see that I'm calling into my colleague Katie's account. Let me just restart this. And now I'm talking on Katie's account. Obviously, it's not going to match. So you will see that for a few seconds, the system keeps trying to match my voice with Katie's voice print. It's not going to work, but we still keep trying it because in some legitimate cases, it could be an indication of background noise. There could be some difficulty authenticating the person. As soon as I hit 15 seconds, because we failed authenticating the person, there you go, my voice was automatically checked against all the known fraudsters' voice print on file. And because I put my voice in that watch list earlier, immediately we were able to tell the agent, hey, not only are you not talking to the right customer, but you're talking to a fraudster. This is something you must either escalate, maybe you want to terminate the call, maybe you have a particular process where you'll ask the person to go in store or in a branch to authenticate themselves using physical IDs. But in all cases, within the first seconds of the interaction taking place, we're able to tell that this is a fraudster that we want to avoid doing business with. Now, let me show you what it looks like in the backend. If I go here, now you see what the backend might look like. This is the system that a fraud analyst would be using to review suspicious activities. If I refresh, we will see the interaction I just had with Katie's account. And you can see that it scores with a very high level of risk. It indicates that a fraud is suspected. And right here, I can hear the session or view the session, listen to it if I need to. I can listen to Katie's voice print. That way I could compare who I was expecting on the call to who is actually calling. And here on the right side, you see the voice print that it actually matched with. So that's my fraudster's voice print, which I've created with, being a voice print in November. And that's all you need to do your investigation. You have everything right here for a fraud analyst to be able to say, this is not the right person. And yes, this person also sounds like a fraudster. And down here, you have the very clear indication that the voice print failed to match with the expected one, and that a known fraudster was actually found in that interaction. So you can imagine the benefits of such a solution. If all you need is 2 seconds of audio to authenticate someone, there's no need for any authentication questions. You're cutting 40, 50, or 60 seconds from every single call in your call center, all the while detecting fraudsters as soon as they start talking to your agent. So you don't need to wait for a fraudulent transaction to take place. So you get fraud savings as well as operational savings, all from one single platform. Now, what I'd like to show you next is how we can use behavioral biometrics online to protect any kind of online channel. Now, if I go here, you will see that I have created a little portal on which I can log in. It doesn't have a password. Let me just share what you would see on my phone here. And if I click login, you will see that I'll receive a push notification from the Sphere Bank app. So here it is, Sphere Bank. Let me click here and show you what it looks like on the phone. Someone's trying to log onto your web portal. Please proceed. I want to authorize it, so proceed. And I get to pick which method I want to use to unlock the session. For that particular use case, I'll use voice. And here we go. My voice is my password. And that little sentence, very, very short, is matched to the same voice print that was used before in the call center. And you can see here that the login succeeds and I'm allowed to go into the transactional portal. Same voice print that I would use in the call center, in the app, or even in an IVR. So one voice print, one enrollment, and you use it in every single channel. Now, if I'm going to do a transaction, I'm going to be capturing behavioral data for the whole interaction. So you can see here it says capturing behavioral data. So everything I do, clicking, using tab, typing, as well as some information on my browser, this is used to profile me. So I'll send some money to ABA for $5,000. We want to trigger a high-risk transaction here. So we decided that 5,000 was high risk. ABA conference, November. And then I'll click submit. And same principle applies here. I will receive a push notification. You can see that my behavior is the one that was expected. Of course, it's me. I'm typing the same way I always do. I'm using the PC that is tied to my profile. But I still get that notification because it's a high-risk transaction. So click here. And now I'm being told, yes, someone's trying to transfer $5,000. Do you authorize the transaction? Of course, I'll say yes here. And now the app is generating a sentence for me to read. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But the same principle applies. It's still the same voice print that's being leveraged to authenticate me successfully here and authorize a transaction. Now, we've put a second step where I have to provide my thumbprint, which I will do. Just put my thumb here, authenticate everything, and you will see that the transaction on the portal is approved and goes forward. So I hope this was useful to you. I hope you were able to get some ideas of how you can leverage the Gatekeeper platform and biometrics to secure all the interactions in your organization. Again, my name is Simon Marchand, and if you have any questions, you have my information on the screens, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And on that note, have a great day.
My name is Max Smolaks, editor at AI Business, and in the second part of this conversation with Nuance, we're going to talk about voice for authentication. And joining me on this program is Simon Marchand, Chief Fraud Prevention Officer and Specialist in Biometrics and Fraud at Nuance. Hello, Simon.
Hi, Max. Thanks for having me.
I know for a fact that Nuance doesn't do, because I called you a voice company a couple of times and people were just like, no, we do so much more than that. Don't call us a voice company. So even in terms of biometrics, you started with voice, but then you kind of branched out into behavioral biometrics. So what are some of the things that enables you to do and how do you do it? How do you, figure out what the person at the computer is doing and whether they are who they say they are?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. So when we started doing voice and our security started getting so good that fraudsters couldn't get through and had to move to some other companies. And at some point, we reached that critical mass where we had so many customers using biometrics, fraudsters came back to those customers, and instead of trying to break through the voice channels, they went through to the digital channel. So, of course, they take the path of least resistance. You can't blame them. They have a business to run. So that's why we branched into behavioral biometrics. The goal is have one platform and one profile for each customer that allows to have multiple biometrics prints to protect every single channel of an interaction. So behavioral basically looks at how you interact with the device. How you move your mouse, how you type on your keyboard, the speed at which you're typing. Do you tend to, click in different fields, or do you use tab to go through the fields? And if you're using a mobile device, we'll use the gyroscope. We'll use all sorts of sensors within the device to check at how you're typing, which angle are you holding your phone at, what's the surface of your thumbs as you're typing. Okay. All of this is used to profile you and determine if someone uses your credentials. So we would see that the behavior is changing quite significantly. But it's also used to profile fraudsters. So if someone's trying to open an account for the first time, they're going online, trying to open it, well, we'll see if what they're doing is suspicious. Are they copy-pasting information very quickly? Are they using a specific OS, a specific browser? Is the way they're moving and matches the personality or the information they're presenting? If you're saying that you're a 90 years old, senior citizen, it's not normal that you're clicking and moving very, very quickly through a form that technically you're seeing for the first time. So all of this is used to prevent fraudsters from getting in and fraudsters from taking over accounts. Now, what's interesting when you start doing that, like I said, you get the full journey. You can track the fraudsters that are engineering information in the call center, then moving in the digital channel, trying to defraud you in the chat. Because if you're in the chat, we'll look at the words you're using. Are you using emojis? Are you making spelling mistakes? Are you using words that are suspicious? Are you trying to corrupt or bribe an agent, for example? And that's a huge problem these days. So all of this works very seamlessly, and it allows us to use every single piece of the tech on every single channel. Now, this is all for external interactions. We can now use it for work from home protection. So we can secure people that are now permanently working from home. We can make sure that, if someone's working and leaving their company-issued computer password on the laptop, someone takes it, we can know that someone took control of that computer. We can always make sure that it's the agent authorized to speak to customers that speaks to customers. So both sides of the interactions can be secured. And this way, we're making sure that we reduce quite significantly the risks of occupational fraud or internal fraud, which we know following big social disruptions like a pandemic tends to go up quite significantly. So companies are very aware of that, and we have a lot of them asking us for advice, and that's why we're developing that, both sides of the channel kind of approach.
Okay. And probably like pandemic changed the equation for many industries, but probably no other industry as much as retail, right? And you guys work a lot in retail. So is there anything that you've absorbed in sort of like in adoption in retail or in any trends, so are retailers embracing this technology? Are they aware of this technology? Are they actually actively using it?
So what was interesting is for many years, retailers focused on digital channels, right? You want to have your customers completely autonomous. You want them to self-serve. So the security around digital channels for the big players, the big multinational retailers, was very strong. They were ready for that. What they were not ready for was on the phone, in the call center, orders, curbside pickup, order over phone and then pick it up in store. And we saw fraudsters very, very quickly exploit that, which is kind of interesting. They went from something very high end to a very old tactic because they understood that those retailers were not ready to handle all of the volume that they would get in the call centers. So they had to lower their standards, lower their security procedures and measures, and it made it easier for fraudsters. So more and more we see those companies come to us and say, hey, so we're really good on the digital side, but our call center is like Swiss cheese. You need to help us do something about it. And that's where we see biometrics being very, very interesting for them. Not necessarily from an authentication perspective, because you don't want to enroll all of your potential customers, but you can listen to everything that's happening and at least check for fraudsters. You know, the same way I can create a voice print that's unique to you, I can create voice prints for all of my fraudsters. I can listen to what they're saying. And again, within seconds of the interaction, I can say, no, regardless of who that person is, it is a fraudster's voice, decline the order or escalate it, you know, take additional steps or maybe ask them to present some IDs before you give them the merchandise. So there's an increased interest, I'd say, in the past 12 months for that because they see that fraudsters have found that new weakness and they're very, very aggressive towards retailers.
Okay. And is it easier to show a return on investment when you're working with something like fraud prevention in retail? You know, like so how do you go about it? You know, like when you essentially like you come in, you say like, well, this is our technology. Well, this is how it works. But what about the money aspect? What about the economics?
You know, we're talking pennies for a fraud validation.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about retailers that will be targeted by fraudsters, usually for very high value items, you know, $5,000 and up. What's a couple cents to make sure that the $5,000 camera you're sending isn't sent to a fraudster and will not end up being a loss, like a complete loss to you? So what we tend to see is retailers, you know, target very specifically what kind of transaction they want to monitor. And that's the beauty of using biometrics. You don't have to do it on every call. You don't have to do it systematically on everything. You can really specifically pinpoint the high-risk transaction, the high-value transaction. And you know, like I said, a couple cents to prevent $5,000 worth of fraud, it's worth it. We usually see payback within 9 months after it's been deployed. And after that, I mean, your system's paid for. All the deployments paid for. For the rest, you're just paying for a couple transactions. But it pays itself. It pays itself very quickly. And not just that, but also all of the operational costs that you're saving, right? The investigation, they need to call your victim and tell them, hey, we're sorry, your identity was used or your credit card was used. And, you know, all the PR drama that you also avoid by taking the appropriate measures. This is very difficult to quantify. You know, you can't put dollars onto that, but it has a lot of value too.
Okay, and probably my last question. Do retailers always know how much money they're losing to fraud? Or is it kind of, you know, like it's a weird kind of nebulous equation and they probably like, they mostly know, but not exactly. So how much do they know about how much they're losing to fraud?
It depends on the retailers. Some of them are very, and it's the same for telcos, it's the same for financial industries. Some of them are very mature. They understand what is being lost to bad debt, you know, credit abuse, what's being lost in fraud attacks. And they can, you know, segregate those amounts very, very clearly and know what to target. But a lot of organizations, for them, it's just cost of doing business. Mm-hmm. You know, they know they're losing money. It's, you know, anywhere between 1% and 2% of their sales. They don't really know. You know, did I lose that package that was sent back to me, or was it never sent because it's a fraudster that applied a very specific procedure that they found on the web? Mm-hmm. So some of them don't know. And it actually helps when you start being able to identify the human beings that are calling you, and you start hearing those voices over and over and over. And when I say over and over, it's 20 times a day, 30 times a day. They're running a business. Fraudsters are calling you 9 to 5. So when we start doing that and implementing that technology, then they start realizing that a lot of the losses that they thought were just, you know, normal operations, cost of doing business, they're actually avoidable. They're fraud losses. And it helps tremendously to be able to tie transactions to human beings without tying them to information, but really just the person that's making the transaction. So there's a lot of work that still has to be done. And That's part of the relationship we establish when we work with a company. We talked about biometrics, but we're also, fraud experts. We send fraud experts to talk to their team and educate them on what we see all around the world. And we've seen it in a lot of different other aspects of retailers' operations, paybots, for example. So robots that are calling into an IVR to make payments, for recurring subscriptions and things like that. It might not seem like much. You don't really have visibility on that. Your customers are paying. But when you start digging into that, you realize that, for some retailers, 15% of their transactions were made by bots using very, very high interchange credit cards instead of regular ones. It's not technically fraud, but in the end, it costs you a lot more to process all of these credit card transactions. But because you have a biometric system embedded in your IVR, you're detecting that, now this is a synthetic voice that's calling in. It's a robot that's calling in. This is suspicious. And it allows the investigators to start, prioritizing what has to be looked at first and what might be a new issue or a new trend or a new vulnerability they've never thought of. And that's really the kind of partnership that we establish with our customers. When we go there with our fraud expertise, we want to help them find what they're not seeing today, because fraud is there. If you think you have no fraud, you're either, putting blinds deliberately, or you're just ignoring the fact that, it's everywhere and fraudsters are active and they know where your vulnerabilities are, maybe more than you will ever know. So we need to recognize that and do something about it.
So fascinating, because there's a bit of technology here, but a lot of kind of human understanding and sociology and ethnography and God knows what else, and international relations, because obviously these people are usually in very different markets. So it is a very, very interesting thing you're doing. Well, thank you, Simon, for talking us through it. And yes, I hope that your work is successful, and I hope that our transactions are going to be a little bit more secure.
I hope too. Thanks for having me.